Ooh, I've just been told recording is in progress. Okay, well, hello. My name is Hrodr-Navar in the SCA, or Steve Alter. That's my Facebook handle. So if you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to contact me. This is just a little side hobby I got into several years ago. I've been in the SCA for 30 mumble years. Um, and so one year I was trying to find a surprise Christmas present for a someone in the SCA. And this is one of those people, what do you give to someone who has everything? So I was hunting around and I found that you could buy medieval coins on eBay. And depending on how good the coin is, you can spend anything from a very little bit to an awful lot. But I discovered that you can, in a lot of cases, you can buy uh, poor quality coins that are still recognizable for what they are, or at least at the time, you could buy them fairly cheaply. For a lot of the coins that I ended up buying for my collection, a lot of them I ended up paying more for postage than I did for the coin itself. So I haven't really accumulated any in several years, and I've gone back to take a look a couple of times, and prices seem to have gone way up. So people seem to have caught on to this thing. Um, but anyway, this became a bit of an obsession for a while. I learned a lot about coins and did a lot of research on them. So anyway, I'll talk to you about what I know, what I've been able to find. This picture, this woodcut, is from a late medieval book, and you can tell by the person's garb that it's relatively late period. I think it's 1600s. Um, what he's doing there, you could substitute everything from uh, Viking era ware, uh, early Saxon, through all the way through the Middle Ages. Basically, what he's doing is relatively unchanged from since way back, and he's basically hammering out coins. The coin that I'm showing here, I'll talk about this particular coin later. It's particularly interesting, but it's a sixpence from Edward VI, who was the son of Henry VIII. So um, this is like I said, this is a particularly interesting coin. And the reason I put it here, it's roughly contemporary with the picture of the person stamping coins. So I thought the two of them went together, and it's a pretty coin too. All right. So first, a little bit of background. Be aware, my background is chemistry, so I'm interested in the kind of the silver content and how silver is was refined, and the type of coins that you're going to find in different places at different times. And there's some terms you come across. Fine silver is essentially pure silver, uh, which is actually pretty soft. You can bend it in your hands. Sterling silver, everyone knows the term. Sterling silver is 92.5% silver. And I'll get to later on how sterling silver became the standard in English coinage. American coin silver is 90%. So those of us who are old enough might remember that quarters and dimes and half dollars used to be made of silver before they went to the newer alloy with the little copper stripe in the center. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So American coin silver, the coins, the dimes and quarters that we handled regularly were 90% silver. Billion is a term that's used for 50% or less silver. And a lot of the coins on the European continent were made from billion, varying amounts of silver, generally from 30% to 50%. So the silver being the precious metal that was being used, base metal is something that's used to water down the precious metal, usually copper in period. They could also use tin, but tin also tended to be kind of expensive in its own right in medieval times. So it's usually copper that was used to thin out the silver. Gold was actually very uncommon in medieval coinage until about the 14th century. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. All right, so who issued coins? As kind of interesting, in England, actually going back to Saxon times, in Saxon England, at least for many centuries, you had multiple kingdoms, but it was the king that would issue coins. When the kingdoms were combined, there was one king who issued coins. So at least it wasn't that difficult to keep track of whose coins you're spending and what quality they are. On the continent, however, governments were very decentralized, and for minting coins, every duke, count, bishop, individual cities would issue their own coins. Each one would have their own standards for silver content. And so it was, imagine living in France, what is now France, and where you're living, you're neighbors with 4 other counties. You're dealing with all of their coins, and you're going to want to know what their percent silver is, because the coin issued by your government is probably different. It's probably worth more or less than the coins issued by your neighbors. And they were, freely passed around, which made merchanting very complicated. So who made coins? I showed you that picture earlier. So there's a moneyer. So this is from a book of 1568. And just a very basic picture here. What he's doing there is exactly what it looks like. He's swinging a hammer. He's got an upper die and a lower die sitting on top of an anvil. He takes a blank of silver, puts it on the lower die, puts the upper die in place, and beats on it. Generally, he would have to do it in one strike. If he did it in 2 strikes, he generally would get a double image, and you often see that in medieval coins. So it was not good practice to have to hit it twice. So you really had to make a good strike the first time. And again, this is pretty much how it was done from Anglo-Saxon times for basically as long as people were making hammered coins. So the moneyer. First in England, before Edward I, and I'll get to Edward I later on, and on the continent, the moneyers were private contractors. So the entity that was authorizing the coins, the count, the duke, the king, the archbishop, whatever, would supply silver from the treasury. And the silver would generally come in the form of silver objects. People would often pay their taxes or their church tithes with silver objects, cups, plates, silverware, or whatever. And so this all of this stuff coming in through the tax collectors would be taken by the moneyer. He would be responsible for melting it all down, adjusting the silver content to get it to where the authority said that it should be. And then he would have this lump of silver. He would be responsible for pounding the silver into sheets. From these sheets, he would cut round blanks, and he would need to cut 240 blanks per pound of silver. That's how there are 240 pennies in a pound. He would be responsible for making the dies. The authority would give him the general design to be used, but he would carve his own dies. And then he would hammer the coins. So the moneyer had a lot of, basically had control over the entire business here. What could possibly go wrong from all of that? Well, if you're a moneyer, number one, you get paid a fee by the authority that is authorizing you to make the coins. You can adjust the percentage of silver to be a little bit less than what the specification says. That means you have a little bit left over. Flatten the silver into slightly thinner sheets. You make more than 240 coins from a pound. A couple coins slip into your pocket. You cut the rounds slightly smaller. Since you make the dies, you keep them. You can use them later. In the moneyer business, there was just a lot of valuable material floating around, and some of it would stick. There was quality control. As I'll show you later, the moneyer's name was on every coin. That was part of the design that he carved into the dies. And there were auditors that would occasionally check up on you. They'd generally take a sample of your coins. They'd weigh them, weigh 100 coins, and it should be a certain amount, plus or minus. They'd check the average fineness of them, but control was generally kind of loose, and cheating was relatively common. And it was a bad idea to get too greedy, because you can see this from the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle of 1125. King Henry, that would have been Henry I of England, bade that all mintmen that were in England should be mutilated in their limbs, that they should lose their right hand and their testicles beneath. The Bishop Roger of Salisbury sent all over England and bade them to come to Winchester at Christmas. They came, all of this was done in a 12th night, and it was all in perfect justice, because that they had undone all the land with great quantity of base coin. So yeah, you might get away with it for a while, but boy, the downside was pretty harsh. But then again, issuing coins was very lucrative from a variety of standpoints. The king or duke or archbishop or whoever that's authorizing the making of coins could and would regularly recall the old money. Old money would get beaten up. I'll talk about clipping later on. People would shave off bits of silver, so your coins would become smaller over time. So the authorizing, the authority would recall the money. And of course, when he recalled it, he's not going to say, well, this penny is worth a penny. He's going to say that it's worth whatever the weight of it is compared to what a penny should weigh. So if somebody's been clipping it in the meantime, well, that's your problem. Also, he would exact a fee, because of course, he has to spend all of this money to maintain the monetary system. Also, the authority could decide to just cut a little bit more copper into the silver mix so that the new coins are actually worth a little bit less or cost a little bit less than the old coins. So the authorities could figure out ways to regularly make some money off of this process. And I read about one, and I think he was a count in Eastern Europe, that basically he recalled his money every year, and it was very lucrative. Basically anytime he needed money, which is pretty much all the time, he'd just recall all the coinage and issue new, and he'd make out on the deal. And as I said, if the crown could debase the coinage by adding more copper into the mix, and this was particularly bad if the royal treasury or the treasury of whoever was issuing the coins was poor. For example, Henry IV, father of Henry V, was notoriously broke. It's actually very difficult to find coins that you can attribute to him. The ones that are attributable to him are very heavily cut with copper. His moneyers even continued to use old worn out dies from Richard II because he refused to pay for new ones. And then Henry VIII very famously debased his copper coins. This particular coin is a Henry VIII groat, which is a 4-penny piece. And this groat became known in period as the copper nose groat. That basically, as this coin was used and it passed through multiple hands, it would get polished, and the nose would gleam in copper because there was such a high copper content. I think there was only 30% silver in this particular minting. So how did common people abuse the process? Well, I mentioned before that clipping was rampant. It was generally universally illegal. And if you were caught, things could be bad. But if you're handling a lot of coins and just every coin that passes through your hands, you just happen to take a little bit off, then eventually you have a jar full of silver shavings that you can do something with. So this is a denier from the city of Strasbourg. Now you notice this one has this ring of pellets around the outside, and the idea of that sort of thing was to discourage clipping. It was basically to identify where the round coin is. And if you intrude on that round feature of the coin, then the coin's been tampered with. Here's another one. This is a penny from Empress Maud. If you know your English history, you've got the Civil War between Stephen and Maud. So this is from that period. It's kind of oblong. The roundness has been shaved off here. Here's an Elizabeth I shilling, and you can see this one's pretty good. So another thing that they would do is put wording around the very edge of the coin, and if the letters were impinged upon by the edges of the coin, then that would indicate that the coin's been shaved. So you might be able to pass this off, if, in a transaction, just hand it off and somebody accept it as a shilling. But someone who's really astute would look at that and say, oh, that's not really worth 12 pence anymore. And a merchant who was knowledgeable and equipped would actually weigh this out. So he might not accept this as being worth 12 pence. He would weigh it out, and it would end up being worth something less. So you might not get your full 12 pence worth of purchasing power out of it. And this right here, let's see, I don't remember. Oh, that's right. This is a Lincoln penny that I picked up in a parking lot. So you can see this poor little penny has been mangled, but you know how much that's worth? That's worth a penny because it's backed by the US government. The US government says that that is worth 1 cent, regardless of how much of it's there. If you can recognize the image and you know it for what it is, then it's worth a penny. So our money nowadays, we don't care what the money is worth, what the essence of the money is worth. So we've completely moved away from this, from the medieval concept of trading pieces of silver. Now what we're trading is objects that represent value. All right, so back to medieval England. So this was actually very legal and very common in England before Edward I. I don't see it that much on the continent. I don't see cut coins, but in this particular issue, this was from Henry III. This is called the voided long cross coinage. So long cross because the cross extends from one tip of the coin to another. So the cross is, in this case, on coins, is more than just a religious thing. Obviously, in the Middle Ages, religion pervaded everything. But actually, this cross serves to identify roundness. If you can see the ends of the cross, then the coin, chances are the coin has not been tampered with. Also, it gives you a better indication to see, even if you can see the ends of the coin, but if it's flat in between two arms of the cross, then it's been trimmed. But it was very common practice to trim these and get a halfpenny or a farthing from these coins, and that was perfectly legal, and it was very commonly done. So who used coins? I've always heard that common people in medieval times didn't see coins, and they lived only by barter. Well, actually, what we see from the discovery of coins in England argues against that. This is a map just showing the distribution of Henry III long voided crossed coins. So that's the coin that I just showed you a moment ago. And this is just in the Norfolk and Suffolk area. So the circles are locations where coins have been found in modern times. Now, if you go metal detecting in England, and if you find something, you are legally required to report it. And there is a government organization and a database. It's called the United Kingdom Portable Antiquities Scheme. If it's a small thing like a coin or a piece of a coin, you register it, they'll generally let you keep it. The government doesn't really get involved with the object until it becomes either very rare or very valuable. You hear about people discovering Saxon coin hoards with a metal detector. They would, by law, have to report that to the government, and then the government would have the opportunity to buy it from them. So the government would actually pay them what is determined to be fair market value if the government wanted to keep it. Also, if you find something valuable, you split the money with the landowner. But basically, back to this is just the finding of coins and pieces of coins from just that time period in those two counties in England. And that shows that those coins were everywhere. So at least by this time, coins were very widely used. It might have been more common in earlier times, maybe in Anglo-Saxon times, that coins might not have been as widely available. I don't have any data on that, but certainly by the time you get to Henry III and later, it does seem that coins were very widely used. So what if our coins were valued by metal content? So I just put this together just to show you the sort of mental gymnastics that we would have to go through if our coins were actually valued according to the amount of metal in them, like someone living in the middle of France would have to with their coinage. So, for example, in 1981 was the last time that the Lincoln penny was made of copper. And in 1982, they started making them from zinc and just with a copper plating. So if you were to look at the current melt value, it's called, the value of the metal in these coins, a copper Lincoln penny is actually worth 3 cents. And that's why they stopped making them out of copper. It was too expensive to make them out of copper. A 1982 Lincoln penny is only worth 1/6 that amount. Well, if you were living in 1981, 1982, you very easily would have come in contact with both of these coins. If we did not have this understanding with our government that a penny is a penny is a penny, if we actually cared about metal content, you would need to know whether that penny that you were just given was minted this year or last year. Same thing with half dollars. This is an interesting story. So 1964 was the first year that they minted a Kennedy half dollar. Well, as I told you before, American coin silver is 90% silver, and that's what our quarters and dimes were made of. So in 1964, they issue the Kennedy half dollar using coin silver, just like other coins that they've made. Well, somewhere along the line, someone had the bright idea that, wow, this is a big coin, and 90%, that's an awful lot of silver. So in 1965, the next year, they reduced it to 40% silver. And so you can see, and the difference in value today, just in silver content of these two coins. But in 1965, you very easily could have come across either one of these. Fortunately, modern American coins have the date printed on them. Well, that wasn't the case in medieval England up until Elizabeth I. You didn't have dates on coins, so you had to know which coins were better quality than others. And then if that wasn't confusing enough, in 1964 was when we issued our last coin silver quarter. 1965, we started issuing quarters like they are today. But at that same time, Canada was issuing a 25-cent piece that was 50% silver. And in just the year before, in 1964, Mexico had a 25 centavo piece that was 30% silver. But halfway through the year, they changed over to a 25 centavo piece that had no silver. So if you were in the United States and living on either border, you could very reasonably come across multiples of these coins. And again, if your monetary system cared what the content of the coin was, you would have to know that. You would have to know this stuff. And this brings out Gresham's law. Does anybody know what Gresham's law is? Mr. Gresham was served in the exchequer of Elizabeth. She worked for Edward VI, and then into Elizabeth I. And Gresham's law, which is still something that's recognized in economics today, is that bad money drives out good money. So look at these two quarters from 1964 and 1965. Those of us who are old enough to remember when silver coins were circulating, what happened to those silver coins? Well, gee, you see a silver coin, you pull it, you put it in a little jar on your dresser. I think everybody my age has a little jar in their dresser or their desk or something that has silver quarters and dimes in it. Just because we all knew basically that a silver quarter was intrinsically more valuable than the quarters that were being issued after 1965. So the younger people listening to this might not recognize it because you don't really see silver quarters in circulation anymore, at least very rarely, because they've all been sucked out. They've either been gobbled up by the Treasury or else they're sitting in little jars on boomers' desks. I've got a bunch of them. I don't know what I'll ever do to them. But that's but bad money drives out good money. In this case, the 1965 quarter is the bad money. It itself is intrinsically worthless, or at least it's worth less than the earlier coin, which I show right here. The earlier coin of 1964 or earlier, quarter is worth over $4 just from the silver content. Modern coins are worth a few cents, not enough to be worth worrying about. So I'll get back later to Gresham's law and show you a case of bad money driving out good money, that basically once the bad money comes out, the good money disappears. All right, so just a little bit of background on medieval English currency. Up until 1279, and that was Edward I in England, the penny was the only coin that was issued. And a penny, excuse me, a penny is 1/240th of a pound of silver, and that actually comes from the Roman practice. Basically, the Roman denarius was made the same way, and they instituted the standard of 240 pennies from a pound. A farthing is a quarter of a penny, but you don't see a farthing coin until Edward I. Same thing with a halfpenny. Groats and half groats, 2 pennies and 4 pennies, appear later from Edward III. Sixpence and shilling appear with Edward VI. You don't really see gold. There were some ancient Celtic gold coins. I don't know how much they were worth relative to their pennies, but they're fantastically valuable just from a collector standpoint. But England proper did not use gold coins until Edward III. And then you hear about the gold sovereign. The sovereign was first introduced by Henry VII in 1485. Few other terms you'll hear about. So if you pay attention to English history, England went to a decimal system for their coinage. I think, if I remember correctly, it was in the 1980s. So now a pound is worth 100 pennies, and a shilling, I'm not sure how many pennies a shilling is worth these days. But in medieval times, they were still following the Roman standard of the librums solidus and denarius. So a pound was literally a pound of silver, but there was no pound coin until much later, Charles II, I think. A shilling was 12 pennies, and you'll see the word shilling mentioned in medieval literature, but there was actually not a shilling coin until 1550, when Edward VI issued one. So for most of the medieval period, pennies were really what you saw. And the English symbols for pound, shilling, and penny come from the Roman librum, solidus, and denarius. If you're reading English novels, you'll come across a bob, the word bob. A bob is a shilling. A mark was not a coin, but it was a weight, 2/3 of a pound of silver. A guinea is 1 pound, 1 shilling. So 1 pound is 20 shillings. So a guinea is actually 21 shillings, but you don't see those until like the 18th century. And a quid is a 1 pound paper note, obviously much more modern. So I'll look at some coins here. So this is a style of coin that was begun by Henry II. And it was this same style was used by his sons, Richard, the Lionheart, and John, and then John's son, Henry III, for the first several years of his reign. This is called a short cross coin because, as you can see, the cross does not extend to the ends of the coin. But this was really the standard design for all of those reigns. And interestingly enough, even when Henry II died and Richard I became king, and then John became king, and then Henry III became king, the inscriptions didn't change. So through all of that time, the coins said Henry, which makes it very confusing. So here's how you read these coins. And this holds for pretty much every hammered coin that I've seen from different regions, different parts of Europe. On the heads side, you'll look for there will typically be a symbol. It might be a star, often a cross, or something. And that's basically the index that you use to determine where to start reading. In this case, it's a quatrefoil, a little 4-lobed thingy. And then you read to the right from there. So it's Henricus, Henricus, R-E-X, Rex. On this one right here, you can see that the quatrefoil is actually part of his scepter, which it's not here. So there was still a lot of difference at this time. There was differing between different moneyers and different coinages. So you'd see a lot of variability in the detail of the image. You can see that the image of the king is very different here. But this one, it's still from the quatrefoil. You can't really read the H-E, there's your N, R-I-C-U-S, R-E-X, R-E-X there. So, so the heads side would typically tell you who is issuing the coin, and the tails side, or the reverse, would show you who made the coin. And this was how they could hold people accountable for making questionable coins. So here you see on this one, again, there's a cross that which is the index where you start reading. Read from there, you have A-B-E-L-O-N-L-U-N-D-E, or Abel on Lund, or London. This one up here, there's your cross, and it's R-I-C You can't really see the A, but there's an RD, ONOXEN. So that's Ricard on Oxen, which is Oxford. So that's how you read these things. And once you get used to it, you can actually, if you've got either a very good picture, or at least if the coin isn't so totally worn that it's incomprehensible, you can often read these things. And it's very interesting. You can discover some very interesting coins that way. So again, this is the voided long cross of Henry III, which I showed you earlier. And Edward I also used these same coins for the first couple of years of his reign. So this one, again, you have some sort of a mark that gives you an index, and it's HENRICUSREX3. So that's the, again, here the index is the head of his scepter. You have HENRICUSRE, and you can't quite see the X. Now in this case, on the reverse, the name of the money year is split up between the 4 quadrants. So you kind of have to puzzle it out to figure out where to start reading. But they would generally follow the same pattern in that you have a name. A lot of them say ON, which indicates in or from. So you look for that as the center of it. So in this case, it's, okay, so here's your N, NICOLEONCANT. This one is Walter on Ecce, or however that's pronounced in Latin, which is Exeter. So it can actually be kind of fun if the image of the coin is good enough. You can figure a lot of these out. So now we get to Edward I in 1279. Edward I saw all of the abuse that was going on in the moneying process. So he gathered it all close. Basically, he made the moneyers employees of the crown, and all of the mints were under direct royal control. So much closer scrutiny. Greater control over the dies. He actually had engravers from Italy, Venice. He had engravers from Venice brought in to design and carve his dies. They were carved centrally and shipped out to the mints. So the crown kept very close control over the quality of the dies and also kept control of the dies themselves. Edward I issued the first halfpenny and farthing coins, and he exacted a strong control over the silver purity. He set the standard at sterling silver, which is 92.5%. Now, it had varied a lot in previous years and previous reigns. Edward I set it at 92.5. And the assay and the actual making of the appropriate alloy was, again, done by officers of the crown, so much closer supervision. It's largely this, the fact that the coins were really pretty by medieval standards, and also that the silver fineness was maintained at a constant level for some time, helped to make the English sterling one of the more desired, stronger coinages in Europe. Another thing that he did was to institute a system of hallmarks for silverware that was made. Now, when the crown or a church would collect taxes or tithes. Oftentimes, they might get their taxes in the form of coin, or they might also get their taxes in the form of silverware, plates, trenchers, goblets, cutlery, that sort of thing. Or, gee, you know, if the crown, if you tick off the crown and they seize your belongings, well, now the crown adds all of your silver service to the treasury. Before Edward I, there was no control or no standardization of what purity that silver was that was used for silverware. And so when this stuff came in, yeah, okay, it was silver, but was it 30% silver or 50% silver or 80% silver? And you would have to assay individual pieces to be able to know what you've got and to be able to know how much someone is paying of their taxes with this. Very expensive, time consuming, and it made difficulty in the moneying process. One thing that Edward I instituted, which still exists today, is a system of hallmarking for silverware. If you look at silverware, silver service pieces, turn them upside down, you'll see a series of marks indented in the bottom of the silver. And there's usually several marks, and they might show where it was made and identify the silversmith that made it. But the primary hallmark shows that it's sterling silver. And this is the standard English, it's called the standard hallmark, that verifies that it's sterling silver. And this is the Statute 28 from Edward I, ordained that nowhere in the King's Dominion shall people make silver objects with worse silver than money. So basically, he established sterling silver as the standard for the money, and he also established that silver objects needed to be made in sterling silver, which made the whole transaction process a whole lot simpler when all of these objects came into the treasury or were melted down to make coins. And you still see this today. And there's a variety of standard hallmarks. You've got this one for England. It's a thistle if it's made in Scotland. It's a harp if it's made in Ireland, and there are other hallmarks that apply to the United States. So this is something that started in 1278, and we still carry it on commonly today. So this is Edward I's penny. And this is the penny that kind of revolutionized the English monetary system, at least for a time. This style, introduced in 1279, actually remained the standard penny design through Richard III in 1485. So that's 200 years. If you look at English pennies throughout that time, yeah, there are minor differences and different issuings of coins would have different marks on them, but you have basically this same goofy sort of king face there with a crown on it. And you'd have the wording on the outside. Now the wording would generally change depending on who the king was. You'd have this same design on the back with the cross and the 3 pellets in each quarter. That was very standard. And it would identify the city where the coin was made. Now, it doesn't identify the name of the moneyer anymore because the individual moneyers are less important now. since the mints are crown property, they're crown institutions, this is the traceability that you need. And so here's how you read an Edward long cross penny. So again, here's your cross with which is your index mark. So EDW Edward, R for Rex, ANGL Anglia, DNS Dominus, and HYB for Hiberni. So now the English crown is claiming domination over Ireland, and they proclaim it on their coins. And so in this case, you have the lettering on the reverse side. Here, this one is VILLE Bristoli. So that was made in Bristol. And you can see from this coin, it's not so obvious on the front, but on the back, you got a little bit of a shadow around some of the pellets here. So that looks like it was a double strike. So, it's when you hit something hard and the hammer bounces, that's the kind of indentation that it'll give you. Edward I also, and succeeding monarchs, also allowed religious leaders to have their own mints. Now, they were much more closely controlled than before, and certainly much more closely controlled than on the continent. They still had basically the same image, the same design. The inscription was still Edward, Edward Rex Anglia Dominus Hiberni. And on the back, you would have the location of the mint. But for the ecclesiastical mints, they would have some telltale mark that would identify them. For example, the York mint had this little quatrefoil in the center. So if you look at it, if you look at the minting city, you would see that it's Iboraci. I don't know how to pronounce that in Latin, but that's Latin for York. So you could tell that it was made in York from that, or you could see the ecclesiastical mark there. Now, there was both a royal mint in York and also an ecclesiastical mint in York. So you could have coins from York that did not have this little mark on them. In this case, you have the Archbishop of Durham, and in his coins have a D in the center, and they also have this little widget above the king's shoulders. Otherwise, the design's the same. But the awarding of the rights to run a mint was a very lucrative thing. The archbishops of York and Durham were still making money off of this deal. And then also, so I told you that the English sterling became highly regarded all around Europe as one of the leading currencies. And so then other jurisdictions, other rulers on the continent started copying the design. And so this coin right here, issued by the Count of Flanders, if you just saw this in a handful of coinage, it could very easily pass off as an Edward I coin, but it's actually made with less silver, so it's actually worth less. And these were illegal in London, but they made it in. There's another one, this one from the Duke of Brabant, which is in now the Netherlands. But you notice in the image in this style, and there are actually several of these on the continent. This isn't the only one. The image is bareheaded. So at least he did not have the effrontery of putting a crown on his head. In this one, the image has a ring of flowers, a flower wreath on his head. So these were called pollards and crockards in period. Just an interesting little side bit, a little way that the people on the continent tried to cash in on the popularity of the English money. So one of the things that I'm very interested in coinage is how the coins reflect the politics of the time. The coins themselves are fascinating, and it's really cool to have them and to handle them. But also, I just love seeing how the politics of the day are played out in the coinage. Like, for example, I showed you how Edward I laid claim to Ireland and reflected that in his coins. So here's a little story of empire building. So you have Edward III, who reigned from 1327 to 77. So after the death of Charles IV of France, Edward was recognized as the nearest male relative through his mother. This is what triggered the 100 Years' War. If you are familiar with Shakespeare's Henry V, there's this long soliloquy by the Archbishop of Canterbury where he goes through the title, the pedigree of the English crown, and the French were denying Edward III's claim because he claimed the throne through his mother. And the French said that he could not do that because French law prohibited inheriting through the female. And so in Shakespeare, the Archbishop of Canterbury has this long thing where he talks about the Henry V's pedigree through Edward III and his mother Isabella, and basically making the argument that you, Henry V, as the heir of Edward III, you are the rightful heir of France. It was during Edward III's reign that the English coat of arms, the coat of arms of the royal family, incorporated the fleur-de-lis of France. So this was Edward III staking his claim visually, and he also did it in his coins. So this is a groat, which is a four penny piece, and this is the first time you see the English monarch claiming France on the coinage. So here, if you read around, again, here's your cross for an index point. You read around, it's Edward DG de Gratia, through the grace of God, King of England and France and Lord of Ireland. So it's all abbreviated, but because it's a small coin, it's maybe about the size of a quarter. I think a little bit larger than a quarter, our quarter. But you fit all those letters on there, and that's the first time that the English crown claims the throne of France. And then on the back side, you have kind of the same, it's a very similar design to the pennies. Edward III's pennies look pretty much identical to Edward I's pennies, but he's introduced this new coin, the groat. So it follows kind of the same design. You just have more words. This is really pretty. So Edward III also introduced gold coins into regular usage. These English medieval gold coins are gorgeous. And again, you can see I've got up here the translation of the words around the edge. It's Edward DGRA, by the grace of God, Rex, or by the grace of God, Anglia, DGRA. Oh, okay. De Grazia, DGRA, Rex, Anglia, and France, Lord of Hiberni. So the same thing here. He's claiming France. You can see he's got his brand new coat of arms on his shield. Very cool coin. Very expensive too. So this launched the 100 Years' War. So you have Edward III begets Richard II. Richard II is overthrown by Henry IV, which gives the throne to the House of Lancaster, which eventually leads to the War of the Roses. Henry IV begets Henry V. And again, if you're familiar with the Shakespeare's Henry V, at the very end, there's a treaty signed between France and England that declares that Henry V's heir would inherit the throne of France. So when Henry V died, his son, Henry VI, was only 9 months old. He became King of England. A month later, the King of France died. And so according to this treaty, Henry VI became King of France at the age of 10 months. So here is some coinage from Henry VI. So this was English coinage made for use in England. So it's Henry de Grazia, Rex, Anglia, and France. So he's claiming France. And in the inner circle, the mint is Villa Calais. So this was minted in Calais, which is on French soil. So Henry VI, now king of both France and England, is minting English coins on French soil using French silver. Now, that's not necessarily a way to make friends and influence people if you're trying to strengthen your position in your new kingdom. This really pissed off a lot of Frenchmen. Here's a couple other coins from Henry VI. Now, these were minted for use in France. And again, you can see it's got his name, Henricus. It's got the coat of arms of France and England side by side. And on the reverse side, he's got this little cartoon figure of a lion and the fleur-de-lis, just to drive home the fact that Henry is king of both. And then also a gold coin, which basically does the same thing. It's got the coats of arms. It proclaims Henry, King of England and France. This is really rubbing it in their noses. And the French people, particularly the French lords, did not appreciate this. So note here that the English monarchs continued to claim the rule of France until George III. If you look at coins from George III, will still proclaim him as the King of France until 1820. But that was pretty much settled in when the French rose up. You know, you've got the whole Joan of Arc thing, and the English are cast out of ruling France, and back to Shakespeare's Henry V, the very last chorus line, Henry VI, an infant band's crowned king of France and England. Did Henry V succeed? Whose state so many had the managing that they lost France and made his England bleed. So that's basically how that whole that whole historical situation played out. And I just personally, I find it fascinating to see how you can track this this historical progression through the coins. And then one last thing I have to share here, how coins are part of culture, and some of these things reach into today. So we've got this rhyme, and I think everyone will recognize this rhyme. It's a common thing for preparing a bride for her wedding. Does anyone know the last line of it? The last line of this rhyme has been largely forgotten, at least in the United States. I think probably more Brits will know it. The last line is, "and a silver sixpence for her shoe." So in addition to all of these things that a bride was supposed to carry, she was supposed to have a silver sixpence literally in her shoe. And that was because silver sixpence coins have been considered lucky coins since the 16th century. A bent or crooked sixpence was a coin that you carried in your pocket, but you never spent unless it was like the last money you had to your name, because it was a lucky coin. There's a nursery rhyme, something about a crooked man walked a crooked mile. He had a crooked sixpence and he had a crooked smile, or something like that. And that's supposed to have all kinds of deep philosophical meaning from medieval England. I don't know about all of that stuff. But you find a lot of references to bent or crooked sixpence. Soldiers carried them into battle. In First and Second World War, crooked or bent sixpences have been found all over France, because English soldiers have been dying in France for centuries. I found an interesting little article that when the first transatlantic cable was laid, they started laying it from both ends and met in the middle. When they joined the cable together, they bound a bent sixpence into that joint for good luck. Also, a bent sixpence was often used as a poor man's engagement ring. So he would actually take a sixpence and crease it and fold it around his lady's finger. And in fact, looking at a lot of coins, medieval coins that have been found by metal detectors, yeah, you see a lot of coins that are kind of beat up and they've been sitting in the ground for hundreds of years and they might have gotten nicked by plows or something. But you see a lot of sixpences that are bent, that are actually creased. So why is that? Well, I mentioned before that Henry VIII debased the English currency. And I remember I showed you the copper nose groat that was infamous at the time. Well, when his son, Edward VI, ascended the throne, his advisors wanted to reestablish the prestige of English currency. So they had this bright idea. Not only would they issue a new coin, the sixpence, this was the first sixpence coin to be issued, but they made it out of fine silver. Fine silver, which is 99% pure silver, which is, for one thing, it's very soft, so you could very easily, with one hand, just bend it. And in being made in fine silver, it was worth more than 6 other pennies in your pocket. So people would immediately hoard them. They became so rare that they became legendary, and finding one was a lucky event. And hence, after that, silver sixpences have always been considered lucky coins. And you can even see this one right here, it's got creases. So it was bent in 2 places that might have been wrapped around a lady's finger. And somewhere along the way, some coin collector straightened it out to make it more attractive. but you'll very commonly see medieval silver sixpences that have 1 or 2 creases on them. So I always thought that was a particularly interesting interesting little tidbit. In this case, also the VI 6, this stands for the denomination. It doesn't stand for Edward VI. It stands for 6 pennies. Edward VI also issued a shilling coin, which has the Roman numeral 12 on it for 12 pence. So these are actually the first coins that also had a denomination on them. So remember we talked about Gresham's law, where bad money forces out good money. Well, in this case, this coin was the good money, which came out in just way more pure, way more silver than any other coin that was available at the time, and they immediately disappeared. A lot of them were melted down, and so they're quite valuable today. And also being pure silver, it's very soft, so it's difficult to find one that has a really good image on it, because it tends to wear down very fast. So anyway, that's just another thing that I found very interesting about these coins. Plus, on top of it, it's a very pretty coin. So that's my talk. This is bibliography, some of the sources that I've used. Anybody have any questions?
Actually, I was curious if you know anyone that's making their own coins.
Today?
Just like in the barony itself, do we have any mentors, like people
Well,
who do that?
I don't know of any. I know people have, I know of people who have done this for special occasions, maybe to make fealty tokens for royalty or event tokens. So I've got a few. I don't know of anybody who's doing it regularly.
Alpha Officium. There's Alpha Officium. He actually is online. He's from down in California, and he's been doing some really amazing reproduction coins. I've got a whole stash of them.
Mm-hmm. Do you know if they're hammered or cast?
They're whacked.
Okay.
I don't think he uses a hammer. I think he uses a thing. Well, I guess it is a hammer, but not a handheld hammer.
Yeah.
A press. Yes.
Yeah. Today he would probably use a press. Yeah. Okay. I have seen online. I've seen advertisements for reproduction coins. The few that I've bought were definitely cast. So they were poured and made in the cast because they're thick. Hammered coins would be very thin. And if we were meeting in person, I'd have some of my coins to pass around, and you could actually see. And these things are wafer thin. Now, being sterling silver or less, they're relatively hard. They do have substance to them, but they're very thin. So you can kind of tell the difference between a cast coin and a hammered coin. So that's interesting. I didn't know that anybody was routinely making.
Not in the barony.
Yeah, right.
But up north, the Moneyers Guild is very active in Ontier, and over the years, I have acquired quite a few of their coins. By various reigns or whatever. My favorite story is when the king at the end of his reign threw a handful of coin out into the audience. It was my second royal court, and I was very demurely ladylike, not jumping up like everyone else was and saying, Joanna would not leap for a coin, don't move, stand there politely and demurely, and the coin hit me and fell into my skirt. And I was like, well, there you go.
It's yeah, like Mardi Gras. Hey, mister, throw me something.
It was very fun to see the coins. And then we have the marshals have been given coins by the crown and the principality for service here in Ontir. So
Yeah.
if you're a marshal and you don't have one of those, you should see somebody about that.
Yeah, and so I mean, people do. I know that there was an earlier version of a Money Ears Guild in Ontir. The coins they made were cast.
Oh no, these are being stamped. I have seen it myself.
Okay, so if they're being stamped now, that's
yes,
either a different group or else they've evolved.
And that was through the
probably
Coin
both.
Guild?
Pardon?
Was that through the Ontir Guild of Coins?
It's the Money Ears Guild is what
The
they're
Money Ears
called.
Guild. How do I get in touch with them? Because I'm looking to make my own coin and be able to use those at my tavern.
Right. So
where are you at?
I can do some research.
Be careful of that though, because there are like mundane laws that govern.
Yeah, I'm going to look into that more.
Sort of thing, and that was a problem years ago, and I won't go into that any more deeper. So,
Sam from Castile Armory.
Pardon?
Sam from Castile Armory, I know, did a limited run of some coins a couple of years back. And they were hammer struck. I don't know the reason why he did them. I think he did them as gifts.
Yeah. When I was living in Caid, I participated in several projects with various people making, like I said, like fealty tokens for incoming royalty and that sort of thing. So I've got to have a small collection of those as well. So yeah, you can find people who are doing it.
When I was in Prague, right at the foot of the Charles Bridge, there was some of the historical reenactors there that had a coin booth. You could, and they were making replicas of that big around the ducat from the time of the Charles IV, mid 1300s, and I got one of those. It's somewhere mixed in with my various outfits, somewhere. But that one was huge, and they were doing it with a hammer. Well, if you want to call it a hammer, it was the head of it was this long, and it was almost as wide as it was long. And the guy would just pick it up and sort of swing it around like an axe and come down on the thing, and you'd hear the bang from the other end of the bridge.
Yeah.
It was really amazing. And the guy had biceps like you wouldn't believe. Apparently, he had been a champion weightlifter at one point.
So actually, during the reign of Elizabeth I was when England first tried making milled coins. So they're actually stamping them mechanically. That didn't work out very well. They had kind of production and quality issues. So not many of them were issued, and you don't really find milled coins coming into Britain until a few reigns later. But yeah, now you have mechanical presses. That would certainly be a lot more reliable if you didn't want to do it the old-fashioned way and develop biceps like beer.
Yeah, what he had was a thing that looked like the kind of thing that you put on the side of the building for a water pipe to come out of, about that big around, and it was fastened to a block of ironwood. At least as best as I could tell what he was translating from Czech. I don't speak it very well, but I looked the word up later. And then there was a piece that fitted directly into it with a flat plate on top.
Mhm.
And he said they were getting spoiled ones about 1 in every 25.
Yeah.
But he was just, I mean, that it was amazing to see that thing come down, and it landed right in the middle. And he said that they had originally had a little bullseye painted on it, and he'd worn it all off, which I thought was fun.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You were talking about the sterling when that came out. Which came first? The sterling as a coin made of silver, or sterling silver, and they called the coin that because it was such high quality silver?
Very good question, actually. And so I told you my kind of my mundane background is I'm a chemist. So one thing I'm interested in, I'm not a metallurgist by trade, but I'm interested in the chemistry of, how medieval people did these things. So what I've been able to determine is that so when you mine silver ore, it comes up as a rock, and it's usually mixed with copper. Usually find silver deposits along with copper. And the method that they used to smelt, to purify the silver out of the ore, would produce a mixture, would just naturally produce a mixture of 92.5% silver and 7.5% copper, and maybe traces of any other junk that was in there. But basically 92.5% silver was set by the process that they used to refine their silver.
Okay. So when we talk about the term sterling, was that first applied as, this is a beautiful coin, let's call this sterling, or was it the designated term for a high quality silver?
And another very good question. And I've done a lot of reading and come across that very question several times. And I think if you ask 10 different historians, you'll get 11 different answers on that question.
Okay.
I have not been able to find any agreement on just exactly where the name came from. People say, oh, the coins were so shiny, they shine like stars, or whatever. I've seen a lot of different explanations. So I can't answer that question definitively for you.
Okay, well, that's an interesting thing to pursue. It's another rabbit hole for late at night.
Yeah, right.
I thought you might like to see some of the coins I was talking about, so I ran and got my hood. Can you see my? Let's see, which way does this go? Wait, that's me.
You're very cute.
How do I flip this thing around? There it is. Okay. Why, thank you. Okay. So what I'm not sure about is with the lighting that I've got, if you can see the coin at all. Well, that's too much shininess. Is it focusing on it at all?
Yeah, it's really shiny. It's kind of obliterating. Okay, so it kind of looks generally like a Henry III voided long cross.
There you go. See, where's the camera thing? Okay. Because I can see you really well, but not the coin that I'm trying to show you. There we go. That's a little better. And then, so that's one of them. Then this one here was actually minted by the Royal Archer. As a token, I was helping him as his scores deputy. And he was part of the Moneyers Guild. Whoop, where'd it go? There it is. So this is the one that he stamped.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the light's not great, but I'll bring them next time we're going to be in the same space together and you can see it.
Yeah, and I mean,
there's that one. And then
I can bring some of mine.
Yes, definitely, you should bring yours.
Like that has
this one is this one, yes, as well. I'm sorry it's not focusing terribly well, but this one is the Marshall coin that they made to say thank you to the Marshals. And on the back, it has the different martial disciplines. And as you can see, they are hammer-struck coins.
Okay, I would bet it's probably pewter.
Oh, it's probably not. I don't know. It might be tin. I don't think it's definitely not silver.
Well, I think pewter would probably be easier to strike than tin.
Yeah,
Brass, I've tried making.
I have no idea
hammered
what they made it
brass
out
coin,
of.
and brass is
But
harder.
yeah, interesting.
Brass is hard to make an indentation in.
Anyway, I thought you might like to see.
Cool.
So those are specifically Antirian coins. So yes,
Yeah,
there
okay.
are. And if anybody, I can look for, I'm the chatelaine, so this is literally my job. So I can look up some of the information and contact those people and see what's available currently. So if you're interested in more information on the Moneyers Guild, get some way of contacting either myself, the chatelaine, Adiantum chatelaine, or Ilantha, the Arts and Sciences Minister, and then we will get you that information.
Huzzah.
Great. Yeah, other than participating in, like I said, various projects to make special purpose coins, I haven't really gotten that much into the hands-on aspect of making them. I'm not particularly artistic from an arty standpoint. So just the idea of like carving dies just doesn't strike me as something that's in my wheelhouse.
Well, the other thing that fascinated me in this was the penny being cut into half pennies, then cut into a farthing, because we all know not much is worth a farthing, or a farthing isn't worth much.
Well, not anymore.
Yeah, but I was fascinated that they actually originally cut the coin to create the half penny and the farthing, whereas later, did they not have an actual half penny coin and a farthing coin?
Yeah, when at least in England, and I was certainly on the continent, things were different, but England, with the changes that Edward I made, England really kind of led the Europe in coinage technology and process for a while anyway. But Edward I also introduced the first halfpenny and farthing coins. So they were, a halfpenny coin was an individual round coin which had pretty much the same image as the penny coin. It was just weighed half as much. And the farthing coin was kind of identical, but it only weighed a quarter as much as a penny. So they're little teeny coins. But from that point on, you don't see coin splitting, at least in England, because they've had small change ever since.
I just thought that was fascinating. That, my gosh, a half penny really is just a half a penny.
Yeah. Well, hey. Well, I mean, like a pound, there was never a coin or a thing of a denomination of a pound until I think it was Charles II. And he actually minted a coin that was a pound of silver.
Good heavens.
Yeah, good heavens.
I thought the coin Anya was talking about was big. I suspect he didn't make many of those.
Probably not. And at that point, you're kind of dealing in bulk silver. A pound coin is not something you're going to carry around in your pocket.
Actually, Alpha Officium makes little bars that go along with his Norse treasure hoard stuff that are bar silver, basically. Apparently there was something with the Norse. I don't really understand what, but I wanted you all to be able to see this if I can make it possible. This was handed to me by Steercar. when he was king. And I was stepping down as Alpine Scholar. That's the reverse.
Oh, very cool.
There. Yeah. I was looking for the rest of my coins and I don't see them, so
Yeah.
I've obviously got them stashed somewhere.
So, in
At least I found that one.
what I've picked up, I haven't really studied Norse coinage much, but what I picked up is, at least in the Viking era, it was very common to trade bits of silver. It was called hack silver, and rather than a coin, you just had a piece of jewelry, or the Lord would often wear a band on his arm, kind of a silver coil on his arm, and if he wanted to reward one of his subjects, if he wanted to reward one of his subjects, he would literally break off a piece of this band and hand it to him. So
Wow.
that seemed to have been much more commonly done than exchanging coins. That's a very pretty coin. Cool.
Well, awesome. This was really good. I really appreciate this. A lot of background knowledge.
Oh, great. Well, thank you. Yeah, so like I said, I've amassed a small collection of coins. They're beaters. I mean, they're not museum quality coins, but generally I was looking for coins that at least you could identify, who they were from and what they were. So I find it very cool just to be able to handle these. And this coin was actually in circulation during the reign of Edward V, or Edward the Fourth, or whatever.
I do have a question about how many coins would people have? Would you be very rich if you had 5 coins? Or how many coins is normal for a person to have in their pocket? Okay, specifically 1275 is my time. So
Okay.
and obviously the coins just are changing right then, as you were pointing out. I'm very interested in the penny specifically because my name is True Penny.
Well, and in 1275, the penny would have been the only penny around, or the only coin that you're using, at least in England. On the continent, I don't know exactly when larger denominations came in, but in the continent, the equivalent of the penny, which was called various things, usually a dinar or a denarius, after the Roman standard. But that was pretty much the only coin that was in use in Europe until around the time of Edward I through Edward III. Then larger denominations started coming in. Yeah.
But how many coins?
Oh, how many coins? That was your question. I don't know. Yes. And it's going to depend a lot on your social status. I mean, I could guess if you're a peasant, if you're a serf, have, enough coins in your purse to jingle, you're probably doing pretty well. I haven't seen anything to document that level of how they were used.
I just didn't know how much, because now a penny, you can't buy anything, and people don't even want to bend over to pick them up. But then a penny would have been worth much, much more.
Ooh. Okay. So
what could you buy with a penny? So then obviously your economic status, your economics are worth what you can buy.
Yeah, okay. And I do have some information on that. Let me see. I'm looking through my computer right now, trying to find where I've got that. I didn't put that onto this particular presentation.
While you're looking for that, I just wanted to say thank you for all this information and how well it was put together. I have to go, but I really appreciated all that you did to put this together.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Bye.
It's been a while since I've looked at the coins. Let me see.
I don't actually have to know right this minute.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can't find it right now. Tell you what, I've got a couple things. I have a list that I got from some English university website on the relative prices of things, and also the relative income of people of different professions and different social status. So when I find those, I'll, if I can, I'll post them on the meeting announcement as additional documents. All right, Bonnie, you
Lovely,
have to.
thank you.
Bonnie, you need to unmute.
Sorry, you can put it in the comments underneath this event.
Okay, all right, I will do that.
That's where we're going to put the link for the recording as well.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. That's actually that is an important part of the equation, and I didn't include that in this version of the talk. I've given this class before to several different audiences, so it's kind of evolved over time.
I had a little bit of a thought toward that, but it's mostly from reading. In a lot of the Robin Hood stories, okay, what are the dates on those? I don't know, but in a lot of the Robin Hood stories, they talk about a silver penny or a broad silver Anna, which kind of made me wonder. And then I know there's some references in the late period cookbooks to a penny bun or a penny loaf, which might say something about relative values.
Yeah.
Well, there again, another late night rabbit hole to go exploring.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm going to log out. I've got to do a lot more research on coins now.
All right. Yeah, if I can help you out, point you in some directions, let me know.
Well, mine's mostly going to find out how to make my own custom coins. So I've been looking at people that design dies for stamping.
Yeah.
With mallet and hammer.
Yeah.
And now I'm looking at the legalities of using them as currency for my tavern. So
yeah, do look into that. I know people in the SCA have gotten into trouble from that aspect in the past.
I know that the pirate festivals have their own dog pounds at one time, so I'm curious as to how that's been working.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Okay, sure. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, fun.
I'm going to end the recording here.